안녕하세요, 여러분. Hey guys, how's it going? It's Sean. So I have a really interesting video for you guys today. I recently interviewed some French exchange students who are studying at Yonsei University. They talked about how difficult it was for them to make Korean friends, and they went into the reasons as to why they thought that. I thought it would be interesting to compare the experience of them, students studying here for only 4 months, with my experience, someone who's been living in Korea for around 9 years. Throughout the interview, I will be giving my opinions and my commentary as a fluent Korean-speaking foreigner who's been living in Korea for around 9 years. They say some controversial things in this video, but I think it's beautiful because they're giving their honest feedback and their honest opinions. So please have an open mind and be nice to them in the comment section because they say some good things about Korea as well. Also, if you're currently studying English, I highly recommend you join my channel membership. Without further ado, let's begin. Hey guys, how's it going? Where are you from?
France.
France.
US. Okay. How long have you been in Korea?
Since February.
Yeah, about 4 months.
Do you find it difficult to make Korean friends here?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really difficult because of the language barrier and like all the cultural differences. There are exceptions, like if you go to some neighborhood like Hyundai, especially during the nighttime, like the nightlife here is really crazy and Korean go there especially to talk with foreigners. But like if you just like walk around in the school, like Korean won't approach you in public space because I feel like it's not something you do in Korea. You just like let people walk and be like alone in that kind of space in public areas.
I don't know if you remember when we were at the first festival we did at Korea University.
Yeah.
We wanted to go closer to the stage because we wanted to be like integrated with Korean people, like to enjoy more and more. But however, we were like moved out from the main place and put on some high stages. But we were like 100 or maybe 200 meters far away from the stage, which are really far for us. They want to bring foreigners in their school, but they don't want to give them like that much liberty or that much possibilities.
For example, in Yonsei, there is a buddy group program for foreign students, but from what I've understood, that's the students who organized it. Whereas in France, in our school, for example, we just received an email yesterday, and that's the school who proposed to the students to be a buddy and to explain to foreign students when they come, like how it is in France. And yeah, so the school is organizing all of that, whereas here you feel that it's more like from the students than from the school.
So I never went to university in Korea as an undergraduate, but I did go to Seogang University language school and studied with other foreign language students. I can say that it was fairly difficult to get out of the foreigner bubble and meet the other Korean students at the university. I do find that a lot of the Korean students tend to stick to their own groups, and it can feel kind of difficult to get into their groups, especially if you don't approach them first in Korean. And most Korean students will not approach foreigners first and say hi. Perhaps this can be kind of difficult for shy people coming to Korea. Also, I didn't find any programs that allowed us to meet other Korean students, and there wasn't any kind of buddy system organized by the university, which was kind of weird because I was studying at that university to learn Korean to eventually speak it with Koreans. So when they say that it's difficult for foreign students who don't speak Korean to meet other Korean students, I understand where they're coming from. It makes sense. But I don't think that the universities are trying to restrict the freedoms of the foreign students in any way. Also, of course, if you can get to a conversational level of Korean, it will become a lot easier to meet other Korean students. If you can speak Korean, student clubs are a great way to meet other Korean students. Let's keep going with the video though.
I want to just add that the school still has like welcomed us very well. So they have like accompanied like us the whole like journey. So like we've been really happy in this school and in this campus, and we like really felt like as part of Yonsei. And that's also like why we want to like meet other Yonsei students and feel like we're part of it.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to like get to know Korea and then to meet also Korean people. So like I tried to interact and I've like made 2 friends, but it wasn't through school that I've met them.
My only Korean friend, I met her in the club, so the school didn't help with that, obviously.
Club is a good way to like...
Club is the best way to meet
It
Koreans.
is-
Okay.
It's not the most formal way, and you'll meet like very different people, but it's a good way. I feel like just hanging out like in the street, in some like neighborhood like Hyundai, you'll meet like you meet people.
What are you about? You look like you want to
Me,
say
girls, I think they know that, but I have one location that I can give to if you want to encounter
right, what is it?
many people with many origins. It's called Thursday Party in Anglais. Thursday Party.
That's
really,
the best language exchange.
for me, it's the best bar. Really good prices, really handsome and cool people. You're really gonna enjoy if you are going there.
But you have to know that if Koreans go there, it's because they have intention behind it. It's like they're just not just going there to speak English and like meet foreigners.
What intention? You just like
Dating in a foreigners kind of way, in a Korean perspective.
And more if they can.
I met a girl like at Olive Young. It wasn't expected at all. Like she just came and complimented me, and then
Oh,
we
nice.
became friends. Like go and talk to people, even if it's to say just something silly or something.
Yeah, you never know. Could
Yeah.
lead to a friendship.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot to unpack here. Basically, they're saying that the only Korean friends they were able to make were outside of school, mostly while out drinking at bars like Thursday Party. I think this is a great example of a difference between students who have only been living in Korea for a few months and someone like me who's been living in Korea for many years. Since I'm a YouTuber, I've been able to meet a lot of other Korean friends who are also YouTubers. I've also met a lot of Korean friends through offline language exchanges, and like the French students in this interview, I've also made friends out partying at places like Thursday Party. I would say the easiest way to make friendships with Koreans would be to use an app like meetup.com, or if you can speak Korean, 소모임. However, perhaps using apps like these to find meetups is not an obvious thing for new expats in Korea to do. Meetup culture isn't as developed in other places as it is here in Korea. You can find a meetup group for almost anything: Bitcoin, language exchange, coding, hiking, board games. I would say that it's pretty easy to make friends in Seoul. Again though, I also speak fluent Korean, so I think that's a big difference. Another thing the students say is that a lot of people at Thursday Party or bars like this are really only interested in hooking up or dating. And that's not really surprising because these kinds of bars are pretty well known for hunting. It's not impossible to make friends there, but it's probably not the easiest place to make friends. Again, better to use meetup.com or 소모임 or go to church or festivals or other events. Also, of course, once you make one or two good Korean friends, you'll start to meet their friends and their friends' friends naturally. However, I understand what these guys are saying. In my first year in Korea, I didn't really have any other Korean friends besides the coworkers I had at my hagwon, and outside of that, all my friends were other foreign English teachers. If you're new to Korea and you don't speak Korean and you don't know about meetup culture, it makes sense that you would go to places like Hongdae or Itaewon or Gangnam and go to international bars and try to meet people there. But these places have their pros and cons.
For example, like the girl you just interviewed like a few minutes ago, she has like her aunt who came to Korea 10 years ago in Iowa University, so like the new university really close to Yonsei, and she was saying that she was like not the first foreigners, but there were like really fewer foreigners than now. So like since 10 years they've been like progressively adapting and like encountering like with foreigners, but still I feel like it's really foreigners represent like all the things maybe they don't necessarily know, and like they don't see you as like, okay, you're coming from France, from America, from Italy, from I don't know where, you're just a foreigner. So in a way it's good because there is like no discrimination based on where you're coming from, and in a way you're just like part of foreigners and representing them in a way.
There are some things here that I agree with and some things I don't agree with. Yes, Korea is not as diverse as the US or England or Australia or South Africa. Also, I agree that all foreigners can often get lumped into the 외국인 category, when in reality, a Brazilian person is extremely different from a Russian person, culturally speaking. So while I do agree that this is an appearance thing, I think when many Koreans do meet you and actually talk to you, one of the first questions they will ask you is, where are you from? Which just goes to show you that Koreans are really interested in other cultures and other countries. I guess you could get annoyed by the term 외국인 if your parents are foreign, but you grew up in Korea and you speak native Korean. Culturally, you would feel like a Korean person, but since you don't look Korean, people would walk up to you and maybe speak English and think of you as a foreigner. However, the vast majority of foreigners in Korea don't speak Korean and are either tourists or teachers or military or students, and they're not really familiar with Korean culture. It's interesting that she says that they don't discriminate against foreigners because to them, all foreigners are in the same category. That's a tough one, and I don't think I agree with it. I've heard stories from Southeast Asian people or black people in Korea who say that they experience more discrimination than white foreigners, but I can't speak to this personally. Let's keep going though.
And because sometimes I feel like they can have prejudice on us, like we're really open-minded or like in a Hongdae style kind of way.
Okay.
But also beside that, sometimes we just like not respectful or like in public transport talking really loudly. And because of all these things, when we talk to them, they're like on defensive mode or like they don't know really how to approach us because we represent people who don't have their codes. Like they have a lot of codes, yeah, and a lot of respect, and we don't know all the things.
The social rules.
Like not taking your shoes off, like in some thing. It can seem stupid, but like we don't
It's an
do
example.
it. Yeah, it's an example. We don't do it like on purpose, but because we don't know this way, when that happen, I feel like they can be like, oh, these are foreigners, so it's okay. But it contributes to the prejudice.
Interesting.
So when she says that foreign women are seen as easy, again, I can't speak to this personally, but I have heard that a lot from women I've interviewed during street interviews. I guess my solution would be not to spend too much time at clubs or hookup bars. You'll definitely have a better time meeting a serious Korean friend or romantic partner if that's what you want at a meetup group or a language exchange or a church. It's interesting that she says that there's a stereotype of foreigners being ignorant. Personally, if I'm on the subway and I see other foreign tourists being loud, I do tend to get embarrassed because I don't want the Korean passengers to associate me with those noisy tourists. I'd like to think though that as time goes on, people like me, long-term Korean-speaking expats in South Korea, are becoming more common and the stereotype of foreigners in Korea is becoming more nuanced. It really all comes down to learning Korean though. Once you learn Korean, Koreans will see you as less of a tourist and more like someone who's really serious about living here long term. Of course, there will be a small group of Koreans who don't want anything to do with foreigners, but why would you want to be friends with these people anyway? Also, those type of people exist in every country. In my experience, the majority of Koreans would love to connect with a Korean-speaking foreigner. I have a great relationship with my landlord, the old Korean lady who works at the convenience store near me, my Korean friends and colleagues, and of course, I'm dating a Korean girl. All of these people know me and they know my personality and they don't just see me as a foreigner. However, again, I can totally see where these French exchange students are coming from. I can see how they came to these conclusions, and I think this kind of opinion is common for someone who's only been living here for a few months. In America, more people small talk on buses, elevators, and coffee shops. In the West, it's less weird to walk up to someone you don't know and say hi. Also, learning Korean is definitely not easy, so I can sympathize with them on that point. I honestly think they just need more time in Korea. They need time to understand the culture, the language, and find a group of people who share their interests.
Korean people are not that friendly with foreigners and that we are really separated from Korean. I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, I understand they just want to preserve their nation. I think they kind of want to protect their people, and I can understand it. I think maybe they're right.
I wouldn't say they're not friendly or kind to us at all. Like, I would say they're really willing to help in any way. They're willing to help you, but there will just still be a barrier between like Korean and foreigners.
Yeah.
There is a limit to the relationship you can make. There really is a limit, and the limit is like, okay, even if you know Korean, there will still be a limit because you're foreigners. But it doesn't like take away from the fact that they're really super kind and we've met like really nice people.
Maybe a part of that comes from the fact that it's a very respectful nation.
Yeah.
I think I've never been to a country where people are that respectful of everything and everyone. Like, you will never see a paper thrown on the floor. To me, it's really impressive, and I think that's maybe why it's difficult for us to integrate. I think that's also maybe why they don't really want foreigner people to come in their country and just mix completely with them, because they know that we are not that respectful.
But still, I think like in a few years, maybe it will change because like
Yeah.
more and more people are coming here. And
Younger people too.
yeah, younger people. And like even people in France, they're starting to learn Korean before coming here, and just because they're interested in it, So I think it's really good.
Nothing to add.
All right. So she says that Koreans want to protect their culture and therefore don't want to mix with foreigners. I can't speak to small towns and cities and the countryside of Korea, but in Seoul, I haven't really felt like many Koreans didn't want to mix with me. I'm a pretty talkative person, and whenever I try to make small talk with anyone around me, they're actually really excited and open to talk to me about anything and everything. They're thrilled to meet a Korean-speaking foreigner, and they have so many questions for me. However, I think a lot of foreigners who are new to Korea can see that Koreans aren't really into small talk with strangers in the street or in coffee shops or in restaurants. I think a lot of Koreans in public or university campuses can have an emotionless or expressionless face. 그런 무뚝뚝한 표정? You just have to be the first to break the ice with people in your community because most Koreans aren't going to be like, hey, how's it going? How's the weather today? That's more of a Western style of small talking with strangers. Also, I don't think she can really say, even if you know Korean, Koreans don't want to mix with you. If she hasn't learned Korean herself, that's not really a fair comparison to make. But again, as I said many times throughout this video, I totally understand why she might feel like that and how she came to that conclusion. Because when I first came to Korea, there were many times when I felt like an outcast, like I didn't understand anything that people were talking about. No one wanted to interact with me. I thought it must be because I'm a foreigner. And again, there are a small amount of people who don't want to interact with foreigners, even if they do speak Korean, but that's not the majority by any means. In terms of actually becoming a Korean, I felt at times whenever I hear the phrase 우리나라 사람, I felt, that will never be me. But that's all right. And at this point in my life, I don't need to be Korean in order to enjoy my life here. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. It's not all good. It's not all bad. It's complicated. And we love it.
Yeah,
We love it.
It was your experience and it's not wrong. It just is.
It is.
It just is. All right, guys.
And we will come back.
You will come back. She's coming back.
I will too.
She's coming back.
I don't think so.
All right, that's his choice. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to make and it really made me think about my life and my experience in Korea. If you like this kind of video, please let me know in the comments down below. Once again, I'm Sean and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.